Good evening, everyone. Today is March 5th, 2024. It is 6:34. This is the Finance Committee meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty
and justice for all.
This meeting is being held remotely in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law GLC 30A, Section 20. On March 29, 2023, Governor Healy signed a supplemental 2023 budget bill allowing remote and hybrid meeting options for public bodies through March 31st, 2025. This meeting is being recorded. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Right. Hello, 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 hello. All right. So tonight we have two main things to discuss. We have the select board's approved budget that came over to us, their recommendations to the Finance Committee. So I'd like us all to, we talked a bit about it last week. I did ask for us to hold a little bit because there was a little discrepancy on one of the numbers that I asked Jim to go back to the select board to discuss again, and he did. So we now have the same budget really with no changes, but we have, I'll share with you the clarification that I had on that. So we've got our budget tonight that I'd like all of us to really talk through. So we should be in a semi-final format at this point. I think I'd like us to get to a point where we're close on where we feel the budget would be. And the only things that will hold us up are just waiting for a couple more items, either from the state or insurance or Diamond or any of those things that are outside of our control as we're waiting for those numbers to come in to true them up as much as we can before we finalize the budget. So that's the first item. And then the second item, we have a draft of the warrants, of the current warrant. And we'll need to go through this evening to determine which of the articles have financial implications. And those that do, we need to make a determination if we have enough information already to vote, to be prepared to vote on that. And if not, then we would need to invite the warrant, whoever's article that is, to come in and do a presentation. So we'll have the information that we need to make a recommendation for town meeting. So those are the two things on our agenda tonight. So the budget. So is everyone clear with our two tasks for this evening? We're all good? Okay. Okay, so the budget coming from the select board, we discussed some of it again last week, and the clarification that I want to make. So the select board, it's really the revenue sharing allocation, which drives the school budget number as presented in the budget. So historically, we start off with the final school budget number from the previous year. And then we add 54% we determine what the net revenue is for the current fiscal year budget. And then the school is allocated 54% of that number. And in this case, everyone should have a chart that I gave. So that gives the school number would be 21,999,082. And then from there, the select board has suggested $400,000 of free cash coming in to help supplement the school budget. And we've talked about that before, that in the previous year, that number was 500,000. The plan is discussed was to try to reduce that free cash by 100,000 each year. So this way, over the course of the 5 years, that it won't be a dramatic impact to the school, but bring that number down so the budget will operate without free cash. So the one extra thing that the school did, what the select board did in part was a mistake in the calculation, but then they chose not to change it, was to go above and beyond the 54% revenue split and give an extra 13% of revenue. So that makes the total of 67%, or 67% of the revenue that was allocated to the school. They didn't really discuss whether or not that was a one-time thing or they were expecting it to be a suggested permanent change to revenue sharing. But that is the number that they presented in their budget.
Okay.
And so again,
Karen, can you, this is Gary.
Yep.
Can you repeat that? So it went from what to 67?
Yep. So our traditional number was a 54% split for the school. They added an additional 13% of a revenue share. So that added another $252,000, $125.
On top of the 400,000 that we're.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
You know, that's over a 20% increase. It's not 13%. When you look at the base of 54% and go up to 67%, it's about a 20 to 21% increase in additional revenue.
Right. When you look at it from, yes, right. So overall, the revenue sharing is now at a 67% rate. So, I'll just chime in and just give a little perspective on my opinion on this is, I think the goal that we all talked about in terms of having a 5-year plan and trying to look ahead, as Jim in the select board chair has done, to look at future years, to say the revenue sharing, the expected revenue sharing should generate a 3.5% increase each year for the departments. For right now, what's in this budget for the school is a 5.7% increase, which we know is just not sustainable for the budget going forward. And so we really need to really think about how we can start truing this up, because next year again will be dramatic as we try to get to that. But we talked about going from 500,000 in free cash down 100,000 each year, but we've gone the opposite direction. So now the school budget is supplemented 652,000, and we were trying to go in the opposite direction. So I'm not quite understanding where the select board chose to do that. I think, it becomes also problematic in next year's budget if this revenue sharing becomes a permanent percentage. That's just not sustainable on the town side either. Go ahead, Cindy. Hand up.
May. That's exactly the point I was going to make. I mean, we started out, 3 or 4 years ago, using $300,000 of free cash, going, okay, this was going to be a one-time deal. Then it went to $400,000. Yep, this was a special circumstance. Last year it went to $500,000, special circumstance. Now we're up to $672,000, special circumstance. I understand. I am totally sympathetic and compassionate about the needs of the school. I understand that. I understand their advocacy. I understand their needs. There are 1,600 students in the system. There are 16,000 people in the town that also have other needs and commitments that the town needs to make to them that also take money. And I understand the school's needs. They have beautiful buildings, they have good teachers, they have a good infrastructure, and they want to provide the students as much as they possibly can. I get that. I support that. But there is a limit as to how far the rest of the townspeople can bear the brunt of this year after year. So next year, there will be another special circumstance. And that 672 that will be compounded won't be enough. Because it's my understanding, and I'm not saying that this is 100% correct because I don't know all the details, there are personnel issues that are going to be involved with this. There are people that are going to be hired with some of this additional money. And because of that, it's implanted now into the budget. You're right, Karen, we're going in the wrong direction to be able to do that. What is the point of a 5-year plan if in year 1 we blow it? I mean, it's just, I am not anti-school. Trust me, this is not something I'm trying to say that's against the schools, but this is a whole town. It's a whole town. There's so many other areas in the town budget. Last night, for example, I was trying to listen to a meeting because we have such crappy infrastructure as far as technology is concerned. I couldn't listen to the meeting. I couldn't participate in a public forum meeting because we have that. Look around the town hall, okay? The school's offices and whatnot are not in the decrepit condition that the rest of the town hall offices are. We have water that's not drinkable in the town hall. We have public water supplies that are not eligible to consume. I mean, there's so many issues. Have you driven down East Beach Road? I drove down East Beach Road today. Half of the road, there's a good chunk where half of the road is missing. I don't know where in the budget we came up with any of the funds to repair some of those issues. So there are just so many other things, and I'm very, very upset with the select board for not putting the needs of the entire town in front of, incorporated into the budget. I understand the needs of the school, okay? But the rest of the town is making the sacrifice for this. So I agree with you. I thought that we had a plan. I thought we were going to try to live within the plan, and now we've blown it wide open. It's worse now than it has ever been. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Go ahead, Michelle.
I could be wrong, and I don't know if you know the answer to this, or maybe right, I'm not sure. Was this extra influx of money, did that not come from the conversation or come from the situation that the school faced because of that huge increase in the education, or I don't know if it was transportation or just the influx of those special education students that they had to either send out of district or hire to take, to handle those students, and that they certainly didn't expect that amount of money having to come from the budget. And I can't remember the amount of money that it was, but it was a huge line item. And there was a conversation about adding a special line item to cover special education, something that they couldn't help. It's not for buildings. It's not for any extra program. It's not to hire a teacher, but I thought it was because of this expense that they did not expect to have. And I thought that's where that came from. Do we know what that 13, do you know what that would, no? Like why
No,
this select board, is that where that came from?
No, I don't believe, I don't know the rationale of the select board because they didn't indicate that. So again, part of that was a mistake in a calculation, and then they said, let's just leave it. And so it wasn't a thought, since it was initially a mistake and then they just went with it. I don't have an answer of what their rationale was.
Right. Well, I think we do need to take that into consideration. And I get it. Like, I know we've obviously been hearing this for a long time. I spent, more than 3 years on the school committee, and I'm not a plant here trying to advocate for them, but I know that, forget everything else, the percentage, 80% of their budget is teacher salary, but the special education is such a crutch for them, and you can't help it. Like, what do? You tell students they can't come to school. You can't turn them away because you're forced to educate. Again, I know nobody here has the answer, but what do you do when that happens, when you have these students that show up at school and have these needs, and you have to take care of it? You don't have a choice. You can't say, well, I'm not going to hire that, or I'm not going to buy those books, or I'm not going to take care of that building, or whatever. You don't have a choice. And I don't know, as these expenses grow every year, and I think if we're thinking five-year plan, like, we have to think about that. Obviously, all the costs are going up. We're all feeling it and it's going to continue, but I don't know what you do when you have this huge expense that comes up and you're not planning on it and you don't have a choice but to take those students in, but to educate them. It obviously, you know,
Yeah.
it's the $1 million question. I'd like to find out what, you know, what their rationale is and if that had anything to do with it though. Because I know there was a long conversation about that.
Yeah, and we can certainly, I mean, I watched the select board's meetings and they didn't really discuss that. They didn't discuss why they were looking to do the revenue share. They didn't discuss if they thought it was just, let's do it just for this year
Right.
or because the reality is once the revenue share changes in this way, it's going to become permanent. So there's no next year saying we've got to back this out. So once it's in there, it's permanent. So I can only, not that I'm suggesting, but if everyone felt that the school needed to be funded at a certain level, I would only suggest that it be 750 to 2,000 of free cash and not additional revenue sharing. So then it doesn't become part of the permanent base. The way this is, to me, absolutely doesn't work. And nor do I support 650,000 of free cash either. But by doing it this way really makes it really mucky for next year. Zach,
I think Zach was next.
Zach was next. Al, did
Yeah.
you have your hand up and you put it down?
I did, and I'll make it brief. First of all, I echo completely what Cindy and Michelle has said. I mean, the schools are doing the best they can with what they've got thrown in front of them. I'm a big fan of Tom Aubin and his entire staff and the teachers. And you know, we've gone over this a million times. So you play the cards you're dealt, that we're just being thrown mandate after mandate from the state that we just don't know how to juggle. But embedding a new formula at this stage, especially at the increase that we're talking about, is not only unsustainable, but it really, to Cindy's point, is taking an awful lot away from the table of all the other needs that we have within the town. So I would not support that. In addition to that, and I don't have the papers in front of me, I'm going to get them in a couple of minutes. When it comes to the warrant issues, and maybe it's not a bad thing. I'm not questioning it. There's a warrant article about putting a special ed stabilization fund together for these unanticipated consequences. So if we embed, you know, a changing formula to the extent that we have, and then in addition to that, throw on a special ed stabilization fund, where are we getting the money? So that's what I wanted to weigh in on. But I don't believe anybody is evil or doing anything wrong or nefarious. It's just, we're in a bad situation. So thank you.
Thanks, Al. Zach, go ahead. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, I've got like two things. I might have missed this, but did we hear a conclusion to if we were going to lease out some of the old high school space to UMass? Did that end up going through?
I think it fell through.
It fell through, so we didn't get that revenue.
Right.
Okay. And then I guess I would just say, you know, I was definitely surprised when I saw that email come across. I think in the context of all the other meetings we've had and some of the select board meetings, I'm sure it's a surprise to the rest of the finance committee too. With that said, I think the purpose of the finance committee is to just simply look out for the best interests of the town. So how do we say, after seeing this proposition, how do we stay objective and how do we conclude that this revenue sharing is going to affect us in a negative way? You know, I think it's easy to like kind of just be taken back by this, but how can we as a committee work together to analyze that this won't work and then get the message across to best inform the town?
Yeah, anybody want to respond to that? No, it's a great question, Zach. And, historically, the budgets that we've had, we've maintained that 54% split, 54-46. And we've done our best to make both sides work as best we can. Neither side, neither the school nor the town budgets work very well with the percentages that are allocated by any means. So when I say make it work, it's I don't know how to say that, but that we've managed it, I guess. We haven't made it really work very well. But to change that percentage will be just doesn't work in the formula. It doesn't work. It worked this year, I think, because the town has generated a little bit of extra revenue than it has in previous years, but there's no guarantee that's a one-off this year. So if you go into next year with a 67-33 split, that won't work for the town. That's just not enough dollars.
Yeah, and I guess if I can just add to end, it's like what scares me is if this split happens this way with this increase, and then we get to that situation of next year where it won't work, where do we go from there? And then I just like to reiterate that, maybe for this year, this special circumstance is warranted, but like you had kind of alluded to, there could be a different means to get that funding there besides permanently changing the percentage without another vote, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
that's it.
Thank you, Zach. Go ahead, Gary.
So this is the classic kick the can down the road approach. 3 meetings ago, I had questioned the fact that we were looking to give the schools $500,000 and then ratchet it down to $0. So I mean, to Cindy's point, other departments will suffer, but the one that will suffer the most is the school department if this is even put through, because we're telling them, okay, this year you're going to get $500,000, but in 5 years from now you're going to get zero. So how do you supplement the budget that increases by 3% each additional year, if not more? And we tell them today, in 5 years from now, you're getting $0 additional dollars. So if we were to take a vote on this tonight, I would vote no. One of the first times I think in the tenure that I've been on the finance committee that I would vote no, because I think it's a poor approach to kicking the can down the road. What I would like to see from the select board is, now that you're going to increase the additional revenues to the school side, what is your plan on reducing the revenue allocation to the town side? Do you plan on cutting police? Do you plan on not funding a highway department, the library, the COA? I mean, 2-3 weeks ago, we were talking about eliminating programs at the COA or closing the COA down, reducing programs at the library. I mean, this is not prudent financial policy and planning, in my opinion. This is clearly a kick the can down the road approach and just keep on feeding more and more dollars into a budget that's bleeding to begin with. I made the recommendation that if 80% of our budget is salaries, then we start a stabilization fund that addresses that, not just to keep on giving it to a department where it goes to a bottom line and we really don't have a tracking mechanism of what they're actually spending it on. And I'm just not talking about the schools. It could be any department, So I think that the select board needs to come back to the finance committee and say, you're allocating more revenues to the schools. Where in the pie in this puzzle is it going to be coming from on the town side? Because ultimately, it's going to come from the town side. It will. I mean, even though it's free cash, it's coming from somewhere, and we're not funding a police officer, or we're not putting another ambulance driver on, or the Council on Aging is having to reduce hours. So they can't tell me that it's level funded and level service, because that doesn't fly.
Thanks, Gary. And just to reiterate that the select board did put together a draft of a 5-year plan with maintaining, in that plan was maintaining that 54% split. So they've already represented in that plan, keeping the 54%. And even with that plan, in 5 years, was already concerned with the Council on Aging and something else was going to have to give. So if the split changes, that's a drastic change to the plan. So
Yeah, right. And now on top of it, they're adding more. They're adding additional revenues to the schools. So
Right.
this is going to make this even worse.
right. As Cindy mentioned, that we've blown our 5-year plan in the first year. On that note, Cindy's got her hand up.
Well, I just want to say something quick, and then Christopher has his hand up as well. I would agree with Al that if the select board wants to allocate additional funding for the school, do not put it in the form of the budget. If truly this, and I don't want to say if, their needs are due to some unforeseen additional special education needs, fine. Put it in that stabilization account, which must be used for that purpose. It should not go into the general budget of the school, which has their ability to use it in any form, and which is fine that they can use it in any form. But if the additional funding is due to some unforeseen circumstances, due to higher than anticipated special education tuition payments and or transportation needs, then put it into the special needs stabilization account, and it must be used for that purpose. It's not a budget item that becomes an automatic new percentage item. So that's it. Christopher has his hand up.
Go ahead, Christopher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I do echo the concerns. I have a couple of points of clarification I'd like to inquire about. First of all, this came about ostensibly from a calculation error. At what point in time do we know where that error came from, or was it simply just a formula error in the spreadsheet, or was this, and how long ago was it discovered? To my recollection, it was right before the last select board meeting. Is that correct?
So the select board approved their budget, and then that got forwarded to us. And then when I was looking at the budget in detail to understand the calculation, is when I couldn't get something to work right. And then I talked to Jim, and then he recognized he made a mistake in one of his calculations of the split.
Understood. Okay. Having had to work with Excel on a daily basis, that happens.
It happens, and no, nothing
Nothing
against Jim.
Right.
So, we all
no,
make
not
mistakes
at
and
all.
formulas, and absolutely.
So that putting that aside, I do recall that a large amount of the variations in the school's budget this time around does come from the sped expenses that were unanticipated. So my question now is, let me switch back. I do agree that putting this into the revenue split formula is a dangerous precedent. I do also, though, have concerns with the idea of the stabilization fund for the next year, just because I know that there's some issues with the timing as to when funds come, or when whatever reimbursements come from the state come in versus when things have to be spent. So I'm just not sure if the stabilization fund would be the mechanism to fix this for this year. My other question is, or my question is, so what is the mechanism for the finance committee would it be to vote against the recommendation of this budget, send it back to the select board, or what is the mechanism to fix this and take it, even if it does involve taking free cash instead of the revenue sharing instead of messing with the revenue sharing formula?
Yep. So the budget's in our hands at this point. So we will produce the next column, which will be the finance committee's recommended budget. And so we will, on our own, make the decisions to increase this or decrease that. and come up with a finance committee recommended budget.
So would it, so again, I guess the mechanism would be quite literally a motion to amend. Is that, or a motion to?
You know, it's really coming up with what, you know, if you took the same what I've typically done, and I didn't do it in this meeting, right? It would be take the exact same budget from the select board, create another column, and then we'll put in the numbers that we choose to add or change in whatever department that may be.
Christopher, the budget that's printed in the annual town warrant is the finance committee recommended budget.
That's what I thought. I
The
appreciate you.
select,
Yeah,
the select
that's what I
board
thought.
budget is the recommended budget to us. We can put the final recommendation in. One other point that you made, Christopher, about the timing of the funding. In either case, whether it's put into the school budget or into the stabilization fund, those monies are available July 1st.
Okay.
Either way.
So,
So the timing issue is not a factor.
Anything else, Chris, for your questions?
that's it for now. And I see that Al
Okay.
has his.
Oh, yeah, no, you've got another round of questions. You're welcome to come. All right. Al, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just very briefly, why don't we ask the select board to come in front of us? We ask every other department and explain their thought process about this. This is in my estimation, a pretty significant deviation from past practice. And as I think it was Gary, but it could have been anyone else. This has a significant impact on not only the taxpayers, but also on every other department and the services that other people expect and hope for. So I'm new to the process. It's a question. It's not. Thoughts?
I mean, the reason why I brought this up is because this is the classic, since I've been on the committee, I don't think the finance committee's budgets ever matched the select board's budget. And in my opinion, what happens is they come up with this pie in the sky budget. They use funds that they probably shouldn't know that they shouldn't use, one-time revenue, and then they throw it at the finance committee to figure it out. And then I don't want to say we become the bad guys, but it's left now in our lap to figure this out. And I agree. I think that we need answers from the select board on what the thought process is here, because it's not going to get better. I mean, if this is a permanent adjustment to revenue sharing, and then to get to the point where, okay, they're going to mitigate the decrease in the allotment to the schools and try to make it net in 5 years, then we should know that. Because I see that this is what's going to happen. You know, they're increasing the revenue sharing because the decrease in the allocation that they're promising the schools. And I don't know. To me, we need answers. I mean, we've got questions here.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you're right. I mean, the 5-year plan as presented was maintaining the 54% split. So we've got a disjoint that happened in the last 2 weeks.
Now, is there a sense that this is going to be permanent?
They didn't say, Gary. I think and I just want to clarify a little bit. So when the budget was initially approved, I think Jim had presented a revenue sharing of maybe 60 or 62% was what was built into the budget that they acknowledged and agreed to. And then the additional mistake turned it to the 67%. So they consciously were agreeing to a revenue split change. But again, I didn't hear them discuss the rationale for that. I didn't hear that. So I can't answer that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy to go to free cash for everything. And this is why we're in this predicament to begin with. And we looked for $1 million override, or whatever the number was. Here we are giving the school 700 some thousand. I mean, they're not too shy for an override for the amount that we didn't get approved for. So what other department is benefiting from free cash? No other department. That's my point. Only the schools.
Let's bring them in.
Okay, we can do that. We can try to have a meeting next week or so, and then, because absolutely, we can certainly do that.
I think we're doing it. I think that this plan is a disservice to the school department. They're
Yeah,
the
I
ones.
mean,
I mean, this is a Band-Aid approach for 1 or 2 years, and then the hammer's gonna fall. I mean, and worse than ever. Since
yeah, I
I've been
mean,
here.
I'm just gonna say, even if they come in and provide an explanation, I don't support it, because I don't support, I can't, I'll say the same thing everyone else has said. I support what the school is doing, and it's nothing against any person, but this budget isn't sustainable to have the school have a 5.7% increase with that sort of revenue sharing. And then to think when we get into the next fiscal year to say now the budget can only increase by 3.5%, that's going to be more impossible next year than it is this year. We're adding to the problem.
Yeah, and then on top of it, we're giving him more revenue.
Right. We're adding to the impossibility. Next year, it's hard. It's almost impossible this year. It's just going to be double as hard next year. And that's assuming the economy's good, that we're going to have revenue to share.
Right, and imagine being on the school committee or being the school department administration when they see the revenues going down and now they have the expenses increasing. I mean, I feel it does a disservice to the school department. I know it's a quick fix, but long term, 3 to 5 years, this is not a good plan.
Anything else, Gary?
That's it.
it for the moment. All right. Al, you've got your hand up again.
It will be extremely brief. It is 5.7, 6% using, round numbers, but on a $22 or $23 million budget, it's over $1 million a year. I mean, we can all get enchanted with percentage increases and all the other stuff, but it's $1 million plus a year for the next year. And as we've said many times, and I'll just end it, where is that money coming from? And what is it taking away from other budgets in the process? So again, nothing to do with the great work that the school department does. I mean, every one of us, or many of us, including me, have gone through the Westport schools, from the Point School when I was 6 years old all the way through, and we had a great experience. But we're talking finance now, and hope is not a financial strategy. We need to have a real strategy, not the hope that something else may come along that will mitigate X, Y, Z. So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to extend this meeting beyond its natural life.
Thanks, Al. Cindy, go ahead.
I'll also just make a very brief comment. It's like sending your child to a private school, knowing full well you're not going to have the money to pay for tuition them through senior year. It's like, okay, go ahead, you can go, but oh, by the way, we're going to have to pull you out in your junior year because we're not going to have enough money. And so everything is devastating. I mean, in the end, when that Band-Aid gets ripped off, it's so much worse. Take the small lumps now. No one likes to see those cuts. I get it, but you've got to take the small lumps now in some of the tertiary programs. And I'm not an educator. I don't know which ones those should be. And I agree with Al. I think the school does a great job, but they've got to find some way to be able to, the rest of the town has to live within their budget. Okay. As I've said before, 80% of the budget is combined with school, police, fire, the retirement, the pension payments, the insurance payments, the other assessments that are made to the regional school districts. That leaves 20%, which is only about $10 million, $10 or $11 million that's left after you pay for school, the original school budget, police, fire, and the other required payments. That only leaves 10. If we're giving an additional 600,000 or so out of that 10, that's a huge percentage out of the balance of the budget. You can't think of this as a percentage out of the $51 million budget. This is a percentage decrease out of what's left out of that little piece of the pie. Because you have to have police, you have to have fire. The fire department has been begging to have one additional fireman so that they could have 3 men on every shift. Right now, they're 3-2-3. They have been begging to have that one additional fireman so they have a full crew every shift. And that only takes about $100,000. $100,000. So we've got to look at this as a whole. Okay, I'm done. Subject's done for me.
Thank you. No other comments at the moment by the Finance Committee, so we have a general public comment. So Betty Slade.
Yes, you're talking as if this came out of the blue from the Board of Selectmen, but maybe the allocation did, but the original request for the funding had to come from the schools. So it's a question to the schools, not just to the Board of Selectmen. Isn't that correct?
Well, certainly even the school's request is higher than the select board's suggested budget, but absolutely. So the school has asked for a number even greater than that.
So I think that the school, if you're going to have other than just having the select board and saying, why did you do this? It had to be based on something. And I think that Michelle kind of was alluding to that. So can you get down deeper to find out what exactly changed and was so important that the schools said to the Board of Selectmen that caused them to want to do this adjustment in the allocation? It is quite a shocking adjustment, I must say, but I would like to know the basis of that from the schools if I were working on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. Anything else on this line item at the moment? So we certainly can trying to get some feedback from the select board and what the rationale is on this and how they anticipate that would be taken care of in a 5-year plan. I think the other item that the select board did add to the budget that we should talk about was a position to add the assistant building inspector of 65,000. And then there's a new position, I think it's called the town engineer. I think that's 120,000. Any comments on those new positions that are being requested? Go ahead, Gary.
So is that built in the proposed budget?
It is, yeah.
So the town engineer, we have a town planner, correct?
Yes.
It's my understanding that the town doesn't engineer roads, the state does. So I'm not sure what a town engineer would be, what his duties would be as far as the town is concerned. And at 120,000, the assistant building inspector, I think we've been looking for assistant building inspector for at least a decade. And my conversations with the building inspector is, I mean, he's flat out. And if he can't be out to every single property, what are we losing in revenue? That's my concern. With the engineer, I would say, that's not really a revenue generator, but having the ability to get out to houses to properly inspect them, make sure that the assessor's office is getting proper building permits. I think $65,000 is short money to be spent. But that's only my opinion. I wouldn't recommend the engineer right now, but I would definitely recommend the assistant building inspector. It is a big town. There's a lot of mileage, and he's all over the place.
Yeah. I agree with you on that, Gary. I think to me the assistant building inspector is needed. I'm questioning the town engineer, not from a needs point of view, but adding in a new position of that significant as a recurring expense is pretty significant for the town. And at the last meeting, I had asked Jim is there any way to make it more of a contract position rather than a full-time recurring expense. So maybe it's a 2 or 3 year position that does contract work. This way it's not in the budget forever.
And it's not benefit
needed.
eligible. Yeah, and it's not, won't be benefit eligible either.
Right, right. And, you know, and I know there's a lot of needs that this position needs to do. I'm just going to say, Mike, I just question, we're looking to hire a position that the town cannot afford to pay for, to work on projects that the town can't afford to do, or the taxpayers to pay for. So I'm just want to be clear, once we hire a position of that, then there's going to be projects that are going to be done that are going to be more expenses down the road, right? So this position will bring more expenses because there are projects to be done. I'm not citing any negativity to any project because there's a lot of things that are needed to be done, but this opens the door that there is more projects that will be worked on, and can the town afford the projects? It's just a question. It's not a statement. Go ahead, Al.
Again, briefly, I would agree with you, Karen. I think that at a bare minimum, and this is the chicken or the egg thing. Jim is overloaded, as we know. Can he take on more projects? But on the flip side, there are projects that we have not even voted positively for, whether it's Route 6 or 177 or some of these other projects. And at a bare minimum, I don't think we should be locking ourselves into into an employee status program, more a contract when the time comes and when the need comes. But there is a need in the sense that Jim is just, he's overloaded. I mean, we all know that. I mean, I'm stating the obvious here. So it's not a question of whether the need is, but do we chase the need? Do we hire somebody to chase a need and then continue on, or do we find somebody when the need actually occurs? And right now, until we have the annual town meeting and the ballot, the elephant in the room, which is Route 6, hasn't even been approved yet.
And the engineer would be paid out of those funds.
Correct.
Is Jim still acting as the town engineer? Jim Hotnet?
I understand almost every.
So I would say sort of. He's a semi-town engineer, the procurement officer, the human resource officer. I mean, name the hats and he's wearing them. I would rather see an assistant town administrator than that. So someone could alleviate some of the other issues that he has to deal with. He has to negotiate contracts. I mean, there's so many things that he does.
Yeah, I think that this goes beyond what even the scope of what we should be looking at as a one-off for an engineer. Maybe there needs to be a division. We don't know that yet. Just to hire a person at 120,000. I'm not saying it's not needed, but we've heard from Ralph, the building inspector, for like a decade, saying that. I mean, and that's labor. That's boots on the ground. He needs to physically be at people's homes and measure. And it's rough for one person. It is. It's crazy.
And just to reiterate, in one of Jim's memos that he presented to us, he did list a number of positions that he did think were critical for the town to have. And Jim himself ranked this town engineer above his need for an assistant town administrator. So he himself ranked this position higher than that. So I'm not one that's going to re-rank him. So he's ranked it of this position being of more importance.
How about the assistant building inspector? Does he have that on there?
That's in the budget. Yes.
Okay. Yes, in the budget. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Zach.
To Can someone clarify if the town engineer needs to have an engineering license?
I wouldn't be able to clarify
I
that.
believe they do because they have to certify plans. So anytime there's a plan that's presented, you have to have a certified engineer with a I forgot what their license is called. They've got like a P&E like P&E license. They have to have their certification to stamp plans. But when roads are engineered and things like that, that's usually set by the state because they're the ones that are coming in and making sure that the roads are compliant. So I'm not sure what, in fact, the town engineer would be involved in. I think we need a little more clarification.
I think some of the issues that they included were like the Hicksbridge dredging project, which I would think would be covered as part of the contract. Some of the drainage issues, town drainage, road drainage issues that come up when the town resurfaces roads and they put in new drainage culverts and whatnot. There were a couple of other projects that were mentioned that they really could use the services of a town engineer. This came up in a meeting.
Maybe to Karen's point, we can get a consultant.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I bring that up because I don't think there's any designing that's actually going to be done by this engineer. Maybe he'll review plans, but I don't think he's going to be stamping something. I think 125K is a reasonable cost for, you know, a commercial engineer or an engineer that's going to bring in revenue or an engineer that's going to offset expenses. In this circumstance, it didn't sound on the last meeting like there's going to be anything offset with this position. It just more sounded like we're overloaded in an area. And I think if we don't need an engineer with a license, we could probably find someone full-time at less than that can still work with contracts, that can still work, you know, to what degree needs to be done, or look for something part-time. It just seems like a lot if nothing is going to be offset or no new revenue is going to come in. And whether it's the sewer project or the dredging project or really any type of building project, there's going to be a structural engineer, mechanical engineer. There's going to be engineers hired with these plans. There's going to be no design happening, you know? So I just think if we're able to look at that, someone else that could fill the position at a lesser salary per year, I think whatever the difference is between the 125 and the lesser salary we could find could be used in other departments. Oh, you're on mute, Karen.
Thanks, Zach. Betty, go ahead. You've got your hand up.
A lot of the engineering work is being done by volunteers now. I guess you realize that. That's part of the question. But again, I come back to the issue that I'm hearing, that you all don't seem to be getting full information on why these positions are being requested. I mean, as somebody just listening in now and looking in, I don't know why it's been requested, and you're trying to figure it out, but yet you have to make those decisions. So how does that work? I mean, and you're talking about the question whether you want a full-time engineer who's a town employee or somebody who is hired. Well, the planning board does hire engineers. A lot of engineers work for different projects, as I said, who are volunteers. Where do you get your information, and therefore where do we get the information as to why an engineer is needed one way or the other?
But we wouldn't make these decisions blindly. I mean, we would have the town administrator in again
Okay,
to answer some of these questions. This is the format that we have to produce some of these questions. Like, okay,
Okay.
so what do we have to address?
I was wondering if you were going to try to make decisions tonight based on no
No,
information.
no.
Oh,
No, no,
No,
no,
no, no, no.
much
no.
better.
No, no, no.
Sounded
No.
like it.
No, no,
Sorry.
no. No, we're not approving the budget tonight, where the intent was to try to get it into semi-final
okay.
form. But no, I would never suggest that if the select board suggested a position that we know better and would switch it out. So that's the select board runs the operations of the town, so they have to live with the budget. So I don't think that would be a reasonable thing for the finance committee to do without discussing it. But we're bringing it forward to discuss. These are the things that came up. And to answer your question, Betty, we had a couple of joint meetings together with the select board and representatives of the school committee. And although Jim in a memo discussed the most important needs of the town, and at that time it was, we just can't fund them. But then somebody made a decision along the way and put in the two positions, and we didn't really have a conversation on what drove that,
Okay.
decision.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Al, did anyone have their hand up? I don't think so. Nope. Okay, certainly when we ask the select board, we can talk about that a little as well. Anything else on the budget? Does anyone have anything else that we want to discuss? Are we comfortable with everything else in the budget other than the things that we were just discussing tonight? Go ahead, Christopher.
Yes. So I am very curious. Is this a situation where the finance committee is going to be going like line by line, department up by department, and discussing further as we create the recommended budget, or is this just a kind of pick and choose anything that to bring out?
Yeah, I think we haven't traditionally gone line by line, so this would be the opportunity if anybody had any things on any of the budgets that we've reviewed. If you wanted to talk about anything, now would be the time.
There is one particular item, a department item, that does stick out in my notes here. There's a couple of the small things, but the biggest thing that I had a question was actually regarding the IT budget. And I believe that there was a question concerning the allocation for an assistant, as well as the allocation for the help desk subscription. And just wanted to get some clarification on if the needs are the same, if one of those might cancel out the other. Because I think, as I recall, there was at least a $50,000 line item for the help desk, and I was wanted to get some numbers back as to how often that was actually being utilized, and also just to clarify some of the duties of the proposed assistant IT director. A couple other small things, but that's probably the biggest single line items that I have in my notes from our budget meetings.
Okay, great. Thank you. Go ahead, Michelle.
You're on mute, Michelle.
One of the things that stuck out to me, and I guess if we do review the budget, have the select board in, was in their expense line, where they have full-time clerk. Is that one full-time clerk for the select board or multiple? Does anybody know that?
I think they have two.
It is two?
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Okay,
they
'cause
do
in one
have-
of the
they do
other-
have two.
Okay, because in one of the other lines, it said full-time clerks and it had the plural, and this one only had one. And I
Oh.
thought the amount was ginormous
Oh,
for one
yeah.
full-time clerk. I was gonna maybe try to apply for that. So, okay, so if it's two full-time clerks, that would totally make sense to me.
Okay.
So, and then let me see, what was I had another question here. Yeah, I guess the same with, let me just go to assessor. Yeah, that one said full-time clerks, and that was pluralized. Okay, that answers my question. Thank
Okay.
you.
Sure. So there's one thing that has stuck out to me, and I brought this up when we had the animal control, when we had the Board of Health in, and we talked about the animal control officer, how there's one single person and they were trying to hire a second person, and we're they decided instead of hiring the second person, they put the primary person and gave him overtime dollars. And we kind of talked about that really doesn't make a lot of fundamental sense. It ends up costing more to have someone on overtime, and there's a burnout factor where how can one person handle 7 days a week, 365, days a year? That seems a little bit unreasonable for an animal control position, which can be urgent sometimes. So I would suggest to add $20,000 to that budget would be my suggestion to that, to help that, and that would help eliminate the overtime.
Would that eliminate the overtime item in the budget?
It,
So you would
it
just
should,
shift-
because you'd have a second person. So
Right, would you shift the money though? Is it just
yeah.
shifting the money?
yeah. Go ahead, Al.
I remember that conversation a few weeks ago, and it not only, I think, is passing $1 to the other side of the table, but in addition to that, it's a question of backup. We don't have a lot of backups in a lot of departments, whether it's Ralph, whether it is animal control. What if somebody gets sick? I mean, we can make a variety of scenarios. We need to start building a human infrastructure that allows the town to operate properly, in the, not only in the present, but in the case of something that is unforeseen. And so, I would happily, recommend or have, support you on an additional 20, 22, whatever the number is, for an assistant animal control officer.
Thank you, Al. Anybody else have any opinion either way on that, or?
I would support that as well. I mean, I think, Al brings up a point that I've thought about many times, that particularly in Ralph's case, okay, Ralph is not a 32-year-old guy that, that's going to last forever. I mean, we have to think about some of these backup plans, and we have zero in any department. Do we have sufficient backup in the case of someone, goes down for any reason, COVID, whatever it might be. So I think that is smart planning on the basis of having those backup personnel to keep the town running and to keep the revenues coming in. No one wants to see a dead animal on the side of the road for, 6 days because we don't have the animal control officer. Oh, that's right. It ends up in the hands of the highway department again. I mean, the highway department has become kind of the catch-all, dead whale on the beach, call the highway department. I mean, the highway department ends up taking care of anybody's shortfalls. I guess they couldn't do building inspections, but, there are a lot of cases, and this, going back to Gary's point, where we could have a stabilization fund even for salaries. So that way we could hire people for backup positions in the case of an emergency. So even if you had couple $100,000 there, if someone goes down and they're entitled to sick leave, we don't have the funds available to pay for someone to come in and take their place. There is no place for that. Now, I guess that's what the reserve fund is for, that if we did have an unforeseen emergency that we had to pay for, we do have the reserve fund, and the town could allocate that. But I think that there has to be proactive planning for some of those emergencies.
Thanks, Cindy. Anybody else on that?
Bob McCarthy warned us about the dead deer.
Right.
We knew it.
All right. Okay. Well, so we'll, if nothing else on the budget, if anybody else thinks of anything else in throughout the meetings that we've had, there's certainly of course, time to raise your question to come up, and we can try to get it addressed. Cindy, go ahead.
I just want to go back to Christopher's question about IT. They have submitted a job description to the personnel board of the IT assistant, which I have not reviewed yet, and it has not gone before the personnel board yet. But if you look at how they have shifted some of the numbers around, so formerly the existing department head had anticipated working additional hours, and now he is not going to be able to work those additional hours. You have to know that this is not a full-time job for the current IT director, and he thought that he was going to become full-time, and he's working into that. He has an additional part-time position that he works. So his salary has been reduced by $13,000 to add the additional part-time person, the additional assistant director. And the $50,000 that was listed for professional services is really just a $20,000 increase from the current year. So I don't believe that the help desk was a $50,000 item. I think it was just a $20,000 item, but I may be wrong. So I think that's how they shifted some of the numbers around from the current year to the existing year. But the town administrator can answer a lot of those questions. I think those are very valid points, Christopher.
Mhm. Yes, and I'm going to check my email. I'm not sure if Keith sent in the information that you requested, Christopher. I thought he did, and maybe
Presentation.
I don't know if I forwarded it to everyone or it's
Something
stuck
came
it in a
across.
folder somewhere.
I think it was in the folder. I think he made his presentation. I think he had a letter, like a thing, and then he had his budget. I'm pretty sure.
Right, and then I thought he followed up with Christopher's request for information afterwards, so I think
Mhm.
something came through, but let me look through my email. Maybe I didn't forward it along.
I did see it, Karen, at one point. I don't remember exactly what it entailed, but he did respond.
I thought he
Thank you.
did. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
he
you,
did.
Zach. We'll track it down, Christopher, and we'll get that information.
Would this be was it perhaps put in the folder, or are you saying it came through email?
His follow-up, I think, was in an email.
Came through email and it would have been after January 16th.
Right. Well, we can certainly, we'll touch base with him and we'll get your answer, Christopher. We're not approving the budget tonight, so we're we're okay. Okay, if nothing else on the budget, we can move ahead to the warrant. Okay, so the warrant, this is a draft of the warrant, so the select board should be finalizing it, I think, at their next meeting. So there may be an article on here right now that might get pulled off, or something else might still come on. So this is, it's a draft, but we can go ahead and work with what we have here. So again, for our newer members, so we're going to go through each of the articles, and anything that has a financial implication, the finance committee will need to make its recommendation at town meeting, whether we're in favor of it or not in favor of it, or we have no position. Generally, the only time we would take no position is when it's not financial. So we would really required, if there's a financial implication, that we have to make some sort of recommendation. So many of these that are on here are the standard ones that come up every year. And we just need, as we go through this, we need to be careful because the numbers of the articles may get renumbered. So the first article is always if there's prior bills from the previous year that need to get paid, they would be listed here, and then we would make a decision to recommend or not recommend. So that will be a financial one, but we don't have any information, and that will be a relatively quick thing with the town administrator can help supply that for us. Article 2 currently is transfers. So as we go through the budget process that we're going through, at the end of the year, at the end of the fiscal year 24, there may be money unspent in one department, or it may be listed in personnel, and they really could use the money in their operating expenses. And so they would request a transfer to move it from the personnel line into the operating expenses. Or a department might not be spending the funds, and it might be a request to move it from one department to another. And so that's what this article is. So that's financial. So we'll, once that number gets cleared up, we'll address that one. Article 3 is the elected official salaries. So we'll vote on that one once that is finalized, but we'll wait for a final warrant. Article 4 is our budget. So once the Finance Committee recommends its budget, those are the numbers that will be placed in this article here. Article 5 is the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. So we should actually ask someone to do a presentation on that.
I am the representative, if you want a rundown from the liaison, I can do that. Dick Brewer is the chair of that committee. I think it would be more appropriate that the chair of that committee provide more detailed information about the items.
Did we get the final recommendation list from?
I think it was part of the 5-year plan.
Oh, okay.
I think it was included in the 5-year capital plan. It
Okay.
included a 5-year budget plan and a 5-year capital plan.
And were the final recommendations already final at the time that we got that?
I believe so. Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Because we did this some time ago.
Okay, great. All right, so we'll get a meeting on that. Article 6 is to authorize the town treasurer for borrowing. So that's a pretty standard article. Nothing would need a meeting on that. Article 7, 8, 9, and 10 are our special revenue funds. So the Waterline Enterprise is one of them. So each of these departments have their own revenue source, and their revenue source is restricted to funding their enterprise. So these would be articles we'd vote on as well. Article 11, as it stands now, is the revolving accounts for the town. So it looks like we should ask Jim. Jim will be the best person to kind of walk us through some of these, because I'm really seeing these articles for the first time myself, so I'm not an expert in them. But the redoing the revolving funds is another standard article, so we can certainly talk through that with Jim. Article 12 is again more revolving funds, so that would be something Jim can talk us through, and that's a standard article as well.
And just so the members are clear, these revolving accounts have no financial implication to the town. This is revenues generated by those departments and then used by those departments for their expenses.
Good clarification.
Just for people that haven't been through this.
Right, thank you. Article 13 is the community preservation, and Betty Slade was here and she's willing to come in and do a presentation on that. Again, these funds as well are the community preservation is funded by the tax bill. There's an extra 2% that gets added on to everyone's tax bill, and that's what funds the CPC, and the CPC then meets and determines how to best spend those funds. So this is more of a presentation. The Finance Committee doesn't have say on these, on how it gets spent. Article 14 is the current water sewer. So we do have members of the Infrastructure Committee coming in next week to give us a presentation on that. Somebody just raised a hand.
Al did.
Oh, no.
I obviously have very little to do in my life now, so I watched the Infrastructure Committee video twice and matched it up against the Article 14 and 15, and have a number of questions, but I'm looking for direction as to whether or not I direct those at to the members of the Infrastructure Committee when they meet with us. Do I submit them, Karen, to you, and you can forward them? I mean, how would you like to do this? Because there's a lot of language. I don't want to be Philadelphia lawyer, but there's a lot of language that is a little bit tricky and some serious questions based on what was heard at the meeting and how it came in final form on Article 14 and 15. But I also want to make clear, just like we did at the early part of the meeting, I am not fundamentally against the project, but I have a lot of questions from a financial standpoint for people in the town. So,
and that is our job. So any question you would ask, it would just go through the trees in the wind, because I don't think any of us have the answers because we're not on that committee. So I would definitely encourage any questions that someone already has, feel free. Let's put them in an email and we can send them to the committee to be prepared to answer them. Would be super helpful.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair,
Sure.
pardon me for interrupting there, Mr. Lees. I am actually, I have sat in a meeting now as the FinCom representative for the Infrastructure Committee, and I know that there was a lot of conversation at the last meeting talking about the actual numbers and talking about how this has to be worded in both the budget articles the warrant articles, as well as the question, because you can't actually have the dollar amount, I guess, in the question that's on the ballot. But I would be happy to take any questions that you may have to the Infrastructure Committee at large about this.
well, that's great.
Sure.
We can take this offline, Christopher, but I'll just connect with you tomorrow. This way you can either answer directly or to members of the committee, so that we don't need to bog down the meeting when they come in next week. How's that? We'll leave it at that.
That works perfectly. Thanks, sir.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. Perfect. All right. So Article 16 is, I think looks like it's related to this, to authorize the Select Board or Sewer Commission for betterment assessments. So I would imagine our next week presentation, they'll be hopefully discussing that as well with us. Article 16 is looking to establish an enterprise fund. So maybe they can, again, next week, talk about that one as well, since it's related. Article 17 is from the treasurer to make property tax bills of $100 or less payable in a single installment. That seems like we don't need much of a presentation there. Does anyone feel like we need a presentation on that? No.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's an hour of the meeting.
Article 18 is to vote to accept to allow the trust fund a so-called prudent investment rule. Not sure what that is.
Yeah, that's an explanation at town meeting, I believe, Karen. I'm not sure. You know, I've looked it up. I know what it is, but I think it may need, you know, a brief explanation beyond just the 3 words.
So briefly, what it involves is under Mass General Law, there's a list that's called the legal list. And so under the law, treasurers in Massachusetts can only really invest under that legal list, which is antiquated. So the state has now let the either a trust fund committee or the treasurers in Massachusetts invest in a prudent person, which means they can go out to a further broader range investment opportunity. So that's basically what that is. I mean, Sue can probably give you a little more details on that, but that's just what that involves.
Great, thank you. The next one is to see if the town will vote to rescind 211,000 approved under an article from 2021 for purposes of requiring a conservation restriction. So just to let our members know too, so in any of these articles where money is being allocated for a project, many times it's an estimate. So hopefully they will purchase or do the project under, they can't overspend. So many times will not spend the full amount that's been appropriated in the article. So then those dollars sit on that article because they can only be used for the purpose of the article. So I'm guessing that this is one of those that there were some dollars that were still remaining and we're looking to rescind those dollars from.
Okay.
Cindy, go ahead.
Karen, and in this case, since it's not being addressed or being requested to be used for anything specific, it should show up in free cash next year, right?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, all the rescinded articles, Walter. How much is the balance?
It says 211,000 on this, on Article 19.
Oh, okay.
There's a bunch of articles that have purposes attached, that the money is being transferred from one article for a different purpose. But those are upcoming articles.
Yeah, that leads me to a question. And is Nicole here? I don't know if she's here or not, but
I don't think
No.
I've seen her tonight.
No,
it'd be great to have a list of articles that haven't been really used in a while, and maybe they belong to departments. You know, sometimes department heads, we change department heads, whatever the case may be, and have Nicole look at articles that are outstanding and may be able to be rescinded and brought back to free cash. I mean, who knows? I mean, we have 200,000 here. There could be another 100,000 somewhere else. I think that she might do it already. I'm not saying that she doesn't, but I think it should be just a course of, just as part of the process.
And I think they have been doing that in the last
Yeah.
couple of years. I think they've been looking.
there are several of them in this warrant.
Okay, so it sounds like they're looking at them.
Yeah. Yep. Al, did you have your hand up? Go ahead.
I did a follow-up to what Gary was saying, and I had the same question, and I'm not picking on the schools. I'm just using that as an example. There was money from 10 or 12 years ago to be shifted to repaving the parking lot. You know, the police or fire department had the same thing. As Cindy said, there's a lot of different articles. My question is, do we know whether that money, and we'll use the parking lot at the elementary school as just an example, is cooked into the current budget with new funding, and we're looking to transfer old money into something that is already in the budget? Or it's just a question. I have no idea where.
I think it becomes a new article, and those funds could only be used for that purpose.
Okay,
Right. So it's additional monies. It's not already in their budget.
it's not already in there.
Right.
Okay,
And it wouldn't be put into their budget. It would be used as a separate article and
Gotcha.
only be able to be used for that paving.
thank you. Thanks for the clarification. I just was wondering that when I was reading it. Thank you.
All right, so Article 20 is the assessor adding $20,000. That's I think that's an every year article to help,
You skipped 21.
oh, I'm still on 20.
Oh, I'm sorry. I
Go
had already jumped. Sorry. I jumped the shark. Sorry.
All right, so that's a pretty standard one too. Article 21 is to appropriate from Fund 20 account, it's $141,000 for purposes of repair, replacement of septic systems. I have no idea what this is. So it's a Board of Health article. So it sounds like we'll need the Board of Health to talk about what this article is. We'll have to ask them to come in. Article 22 is another one by the Board of Health. So this one would be a non-financial one. So we wouldn't need to vote on that one. Article 23 is to appropriate $15,000 from the receipts reserve account to purchase a roll-off container. We can certainly ask the Board of Health when they come in to just discuss that. Article 24 is to rescind the vote taken from May 23, transferring to capitalization $93,000 for environmental remediation. Wait, so I'm confused what this is. So we're rescinding an article and then transferring it to the capital stabilization account. Okay, so there must have been monies left over in an account, so we're transferring it to the capital stabilization account.
But what does that have to do with 2011? Because the money comes from an article in 2011. What happened in 23?
I don't know.
They're rescinding a vote taken. What was the vote? Yeah, it's not worded.
We'll ask the town accountant
Yep.
to discuss that. Article 25 is a transfer of Westport Community School capital article in the amount of $93,000 plus change, which represents from a special town meeting from December 2011 for environmental remediation to be used for building repairs or talk. Go ahead, Al.
So the amount of money from the capital stabilization of 93,497.85 is the same amount that is swinging into Article 25.
Oh,
Yeah, and 26.
And yes, and 26. Good for you. Yep. So I think we need answers on that.
I think so. It's like a little puzzle we're looking at now. Okay, so we'll definitely ask the town accountant to kind of give us on all three of those articles. All right, Article 27 is to close out Article 5 from a town meeting from 2017 for the Westport Elementary gym floor in the amount of $41,000 and repurpose that for the parking lot. That's what Al was talking about.
Right.
He was ahead of us. Does anyone feel the need to want to talk to anyone about this, or are we comfortable with the article as it is?
So this
When
is
they-
just,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, no, go ahead, Gary.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted clarification. So this is where they had money, and I think, is this like CIPC money where they didn't use it and now they want to move it to something else? Is that what this is?
Mm-hmm.
It appears so, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And
That's the question I had. Are these on the CIPC? Are these on the capital plan? Like we're saying we're rescinding this to do that. Are we
Right, they
moving
were
into
from
items that are on the capital plan?
Yeah.
Right, and is this new money allocated somewhere else, and now we're trying to get money from the past? I have no idea. I'm not saying anybody's doing anything.
I think it's money they didn't use. It was allocated
Right.
to them at one time. They didn't use any or all of it. And now, but they get to keep it, but now they have to move it somewhere else by article.
Right.
But is the parking lot in their new capital?
Yeah, that's my question.
It is not in their new capital,
It is- Okay,
it's not in their new capital plan, no.
It,
Last year it was, we had an allocation last year and it was funded that part of the elementary school parking lot was done,
Was-
but not the entire parking lot was done.
Right, and just to be clear, I know you just said that they get to keep it, but they don't necessarily get to keep it. So an option is that it gets turned into the capital fund account, or it just gets turned back into free cash. But I'm not
Karen-
opposed to that. I'm just commenting on what you.
gotcha.
what you
Yep,
said.
yep. No, that makes sense.
Karen, Mr. Aubin, Mr.
Oh, go
Aubin
ahead,
has his
Mr.
hand raised.
Aubin.
You're on mute, Tom.
Good evening. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just wanted to provide some clarity. The parking lot was on, as Cindy said, the CIPC schedule for the 23 year. Unfortunately, the amount of money that we had to allocate for that left a portion of that parking lot undone. So I believe the idea was to get that parking lot completely done with that residual that had been left over from, the gym floor going back some time. So, thanks.
Tom, does that give you enough funds to complete the parking lot, or do you
My
still
under-
need more funds?
Karen, it's my understanding that 40-something thousand will give us enough to complete the west parking lot.
Terrific.
well, Tom, I was just going to say that I had some asphalt going down my laneway, and when I looked at this number and to complete the parking lot, I said, geez, I've got to find out who you contracted.
No, it's a relatively small amount that has to be done, but we know the cost of doing this now. So I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to provide clarity for anybody that was watching,
No, not an interruption, because it saves us, if that might be sufficient enough information for us that we don't need to ask you to come in to talk about it. Is everyone comfortable with that explanation, or do we want to schedule something further? I'm comfortable with
Yeah,
what
I'm fine.
Tom just said, so, okay. All right, we took one off the list, Tom, so thank you.
Here we go.
Christopher has his hand up,
Go
Karen.
ahead, Christopher.
I do, yes, Madam Chair. I actually need to leave the meeting, so I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to have to log off here.
Thank you very much. We'll make the record that Christopher is leaving at 8:06 p.m. Thank you and have a good night. Good night.
Thank you, and I'll see you all next week. Thank you very
All
much.
right, thank you. All right, so one article down, 30 more to go. Thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. Article 28 is to see if the town will transfer 15,000 from the Beach Enterprise Fund for purpose of purchasing land at Cherry and Webb Beach. So this is one that's coming, so it's not affecting the general fund, so it is coming from their enterprise fund to purchase, but we can certainly ask questions if we want to ask. Then there's another article 29, which is to transfer 49,000 from the Beach Enterprise Fund to replace an existing fence at Cherry and Webb Beach and for purchasing a vehicle for beach use.
The 15,000 must be a pretty small piece for land that's down at Cherry and Webb Lane. So it must be a little, must be a little postage stamp piece that became available. The Beach Enterprise, the fence issue is something that's been brought up many times. That there was an article evidently a few years ago about putting a fence up to keep residents or beachgoers from entering property that's adjacent to the beach. When you walk over, this is Cherry and Webb Beach. when you walk over the hill. That fence has come down. It's in disrepair. It's also a snow fence as well. But the cost to replace that fence has gone up significantly since the article was initially put in several years ago. So the beach committee has asked for to use additional funds to replace the fence in addition to buying a beach worthy vehicle to be able to get up and down the beach as necessary. So I don't know if we need the beach committee to come in.
I think what we can do is certainly our town administrator, Jim Hartnett, when he comes to our meeting, he can give us the same flavor. And I think,
Right.
in my opinion, that would be sufficient coming from Jim and not having to ask the beach committee to come in and say exactly what Jim would be able to say.
I agree.
Okay, and we can do that for the Article 30, which is marine services as well. There's a $30,000 amount looking to come from the municipal waterways fund. So again, not coming from the general fund, not coming from free cash. So those are less of a financial issue for us to vote on. All right, Article 31. I'd say this does not impact financially. I'm not sure what it is. I
Zoning
think
article?
it's from the Conservation Commission.
Sounds like they're transferring land from.
What's what, select board?
Who's sponsoring the select board?
And the Conservation Commission.
Oh, okay.
So it looks like the title is going from the Select Board to the Conservation Committee.
It was land that was taken by tax title,
Okay.
and they're transferring it to the Conservation Commission.
Oh, okay.
It was acquired, as you can see in the fourth line up, which presently holds said parcels of land acquired by tax title to the Town of Westport Conservation Commission to be held by the Conservation Commission for conservation and passive recreation. So it's just a transfer of control from the
Right.
Select Board to the Conservation Commission.
Go ahead, Zach.
I guess I would just be interested to know what lot that is.
Right.
Because it almost sounds like there's the potential for revenue here if it wasn't going to be transferred to the Conservation Commission.
Right. Maybe it's wetlands, maybe it's not. I don't know what parcel it is.
I don't necessarily know that they have to come on here to explain that, but it is just.
Well,
Jim,
ask
Jim will know. Yeah, Jim will know.
Jim will tell us.
Right. The man with many hats. He'll
Yeah.
he'll know the answer.
Jim will tell us. All right, so the next article, to see if the town will, the municipal light board.
Yeesh.
This is to elect a municipal light board consisting of 5 citizens. So this is to elect a board, right? So then the municipal light board shall have authority to construct, purchase, or lease the plant in accordance with vote at town meeting and maintain to operate the same.
I think we just lost Gary.
So 8:13, we just lost Gary for the evening, maybe?
We still have a quorum. We still have a quorum.
Good, go ahead, Al.
You're on mute, Al.
Boy, that would be a first time in my life that I was on mute, so. This is not a bone of contention, but this is, for me and a number of people that I've spoken to, something that it just defies what everybody understands. I mean, what is a municipal light board? What do they do? Why do they do it? How do they do it? What is the cost? What is the, is there going to be an additional cost to the town for not just a committee, but, you know, an administrator, on and on and on and on. I mean, this is something that is almost in the ether, you know, as far as understanding. So I just wanted to lay that out, that it is a mystery. And now, or recently, some people that I know have gotten bills regarding, or not bills, but would you like to sign up for the municipal light board? And they're saying, what the heck is a municipal light board? And I don't have.
I think we definitely need a presentation to understand what this means, and then what powers this light board would have, and what, you know, because it could have financial implications. I'm not really sure.
I'm
what
not
they're-
This has come up before. They
Right.
just changed the phrasing from light plant to light board. And there were some examples of other communities that had done it.
So we've had 2 affirmative votes at town meeting previously to move forward with the municipal light board. The prior 2 town meetings have done this, but we've never had a full presentation from although maybe last year we did, from the
Yeah, we
Internet
did.
Advisory Committee, that there was a gentleman from the company that is putting all of this together. So I think we should have them back in, because now this is the next step. They needed those 2 positive affirmative votes at town meeting previously in order to move forward. And they had to be, if you recall, they had to be in 2 successive years. They had to be 2 years in a row. If you skipped a year, I think we had to start from the beginning again. You had to have 2 years in a row that we had affirmative votes to accept a municipal lighting plant. And since there was no financial commitment at that time, town meeting moved forward to accept that. Now we're getting into a little bit more of a planning stage of this. This is to bring fiber optics throughout the town. And this would bring it to your driveway, so to speak. But where the cost comes in, I have no clue. So I think it's time that we have a little bit more detailed meeting with the Internet Advisory Committee.
Damn, Opera funds for that.
Right, okay, we'll get in contact with them. All right, Articles 33 through 38 are planning board articles, short-term. So I'm not sure that they really have any financial impact for us. We generally bypass the planning board ones.
I don't think the planning board has finished. I think they met last night on at least one of these articles on the short-term rental. I'm not sure the planning board is even ready to discuss some of these yet.
Oh, so for all we know, they even could be removed from the warrant if they're not
Right. I think
ready.
that's why they're in yellow on the warrant.
Okay. Okay. All right, so we'll wait and see. We'll get a final warrant there. All right, Article 39 is an amendment to personnel bylaws, which generally do not impact financially. It looks like they're adding some position changes, right? So.
Right. So the personnel board has not met to approve these, but we have gone through some of these things. Beach manager, this is an additional hours for the current recreation director that will be paid for out of the beach committee, so that the recreation commission director will oversee the management of the lifeguards to coordinate, schedules and hiring and that type of thing. So someone has a person to go to, one less hat for the town administrator to wear. So the additional 5 hours per week, I believe, will be paid for out of the beach committee and not the recreation department. I think they've requested a change for the hourly pay of the assistant head lifeguard. You can see there the recreation department, her hours will go from 20 to 32. Information technology, that's the assistant director. This is, we have not approved the job description yet, nor the position title, as well as the town engineer. They've put together a job description. The personnel board has not yet reviewed that job description.
Okay. Okay.
Al has his hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Al.
Just a quickie, does the recreation director have the qualifications to hire and administer lifeguards?
I believe so. I mean, this is a role that she filled last year when they had kind of the lifeguard crisis. We don't know if we're going to have a similar crisis this year, but she went through that process. The beach committee, I believe, was very satisfied with her role in that, and that's why they've asked whether or not she'd be willing to extend her hours accordingly. And the one question I do have, I don't know if her increase in hours is seasonal, which I would think it would be, so that she would only have these additional hours, because their allocation of funding, I believe, is only about $5,000. So I think that this is a seasonal role for her to increase her hours just during that period of time.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure that we were not finding a person to fill a position if they weren't qualified to do it, but it sounds like
Right.
he is, so great. That's all.
Yeah.
Yep, thanks.
Great. All right, so Article 40 is for the select board to authorize a petition for the passage of legislation. So that does not look like that has financial implications unless someone thinks it does.
This is kind of an interesting article because the select board can grant licenses, malt and liquor licenses, in their own authority. I mean, they do this at their regular board meetings. I've never seen a specific article for a specific location on a town meeting warrant. I mean, they do that on a regular basis at their board meetings. They get a police report, they interview the applicant, they go through that. The town has issued so many liquor licenses, whether they be all liquor or just wine and beer, and they can do that on a regular basis. I don't know why this has to be used for this purpose. I'm curious about this, why it's coming before a town meeting. So this is what I would definitely ask Jim about.
Okay.
Yeah, I would check. I would guess that it is 2 liquor licenses on abutting properties. And
Okay.
because there's Harry's, which is in the plaza just to the east of the gas station. And I believe, and I could be way wrong, but I believe that the gas station was rejected once, if not twice, prior to, because of the proximity.
Oh, so is Harry's that Star convenience store? So you're talking about the mobile station on 177?
Right. So you get to the end of Old County Road.
Right.
You look to the left, there's the mobile station. You
Right.
look, and there's the plaza. Within is Harry's convenience store that's been there for years. They have a beer and wine license. And the mobile station is looking to get a beer and wine license. So I'm just pure speculation, but it wouldn't surprise me if that was the reason. I mean, in the old days, you had to be, so many 100 or 1,000 feet away from another. You couldn't be near a school. You couldn't be near a church. You couldn't be, this, that, and the other. And so I think that's probably where that one is going.
That makes sense.
I don't have any skin in the game on it. I'm just
Okay. We'll ask Jim. We'll
Yeah.
get clarification.
Yep.
All right, let's keep on going. We're on the last round, right? We're in the 40s now. I think this is going to be a long town meeting.
Oh, I think that the water sewer issue could take a whole evening. We
Right,
could have multiple evenings.
right. All right, so Article 41 is to vote for the town to acquire by gift some land from Tripp and Sons. Okay,
Losing some.
Jim can explain it, but it doesn't seem like that's got financial.
Well, we're not going to get the tax revenue from it anymore.
That's true. Good point.
Second lot's pretty big.
Good point. So we should ask Jim about that.
Yeah, that's about 3/4 of an acre. It's nearly an acre. 40,000 square feet would be an acre, so it's nearly an acre.
All right, we will inquire. All right, Article 42 is to accept the layout of a public way. That generally we haven't voted on in the past, and that's by petition. Article
Oh,
40.
so that's interesting, Karen, that it's by petition. Typically, the highway department or the select board or one of the town boards recommends the acceptance of a road. So
Yeah.
this is by petition. We don't know what the condition of the road is in. So these are the residents of that street that are petitioning to have it accepted. This is not coming from highway planning or select board.
Right, so we will have to ask because there must be some reason why the town hasn't accepted the road yet, so.
Correct,
So we'll ask Jim.
right.
So most of these, other than, we'll finish up and then we'll wrap up. So, all right, so Article 43 is to establish a new special education stabilization fund. We need a presentation on that.
Yeah.
And while conceptually I understand it's a special fund for special education, so if special education in any one year, in any one time, that those funds can be used. My concern on that is that the other stabilization funds that the town has, which would be the capital stabilization fund, the regular stabilization fund, the town votes to put money in to the stabilization fund, then the town votes to take the money out. The way this special education one is that the town would vote to put money in, but taking money out is purely at the voting of the select board and the school committee.
Yes, that's correct.
And I think they're, in my opinion, I know that's what the state allows, so that's a state rule. In my opinion, that's not enough checks and balances. And I had asked Jim, is there any way, even though that's the minimum requirement of the state, can we put in our own bylaws to have more checks and balances, that maybe the finance committee also has to approve it, or that it does go to town meeting to still authorize it. So, just because that's the minimum of the state I feel I think we need to discuss that.
I think having town meeting do it, might be difficult because they need to pay these bills.
Right.
So you can't wait for a town meeting or hold a town meeting, which would cost us, I don't know, $3,000, $5,000. That might be the only item on a town meeting warrant, is to approve the payment of that. So I wouldn't necessarily endorse including a special town meeting, but perhaps other parties. But I'm sorry, I misspoke. Zach has his hand up.
Go ahead, Zach.
Yeah, I mean, I just would say we kind of alluded to this earlier. It kind of seems like an effort from the school department and select board to kind of solve the issue of, the free cash they've been requiring lately, especially since a lot of the funds that they, said they needed this year came from special education. This would sound like if this was established, there would be less of a need for that revenue split to change as well. Right?
Yeah, and conceptually, this would do that. I just want to make sure that there's enough checks and balances to move the money out.
Totally agree with the explanation. Just wanted to chime in on it.
Yep,
Seems like
absolutely. Yeah.
kind of touched on it earlier.
Okay, so well, I'm not sure who's the best person for the presentation on that.
I think
Um,
perhaps the town, well, no, I was gonna say, the treasurer can explain the mechanism of it, but as far as establishing the rules for it, I think that would be a joint effort between, I don't know, the select board controls the payment of bills.
Ask them both.
Yeah, they sign the bill warrant every week. So nothing gets paid without their signature. So if we ask them to include us in their approval on certain items, I would think that that would be a select board item.
right, so we can we can discuss this article with Jim and understand if there's modifications that could allow for more, because this is establishing a bylaw. So if something's not in this article, then there's no one else has any right to do anything. Did someone have their hand up? Go ahead, Al.
It very, very quickly, and forget the structure, or I'm forgetting the structure. It's just, I get the special ed stabilization fund, the need and whatever. What precipitated it? What is the purpose? What do people in the school committee or the school department think about how it's going to be used, how it's distributed? So possibly it really needs to be a joint meeting with just not the treasurer and whomever else we said, but also whoever in the school committee, whether it's Tom, who I know is still here, or somebody else, to describe what their thoughts are relating to this, because we're talking about potentially a significant amount of money that is being sucked out of the general budget into a special fund that, in addition to the school department's cut, whatever that might be, and we discussed that earlier, I won't go into that. And so I just think we need to get a feel for it. So I would add someone in the school department to do that.
Great, thank you. Got that on the list. All right, Article 44 is to close out an article from 2023. It is a master clock paging system for $55,000, and they're looking to put that into the specialization fund. Go ahead, Cindy.
I guess my question on this is that this article is just a year old. Was that money not used at all? This just came from last year's town meeting. So, Tom, you're on the line here. Was the amount that was appropriate? I don't know how much was appropriated for that article, but this 55,000, is this leftover, or was the master clock paging system never addressed?
Yeah, so, this has been something that's been going for a while, Cindy. I don't know, I know we just did the master clock over at the West, I believe, and I got to check on the MAC. But as far as the funding source for it, I'm at a loss right now. I don't have anything in front of me. So
Okay. All right. That's fine. If you knew off the top of your head, that's fine. So I think that we should find out about this, Karen, since this was just from last year's town meeting.
Right. Right, okay, that's on our list to, for Jim in school as well. All right, Article 45.
And Karen, not to interrupt, I can certainly, get you more definitive information tomorrow.
Sure, thank you.
Okay.
Article 45 is to see if the town will raise and appropriate to add to the capital stabilization fund. So we'll know that more after we finalize the budget and know how much free cash we may or may not have, to know if we have dollars, and then we'll have to determine if we want to put it into the capital stabilization fund or the general stabilization fund, which is Article 46.
Zach and Michelle have their hands up.
Oh, go ahead, Zach.
I just wanted to make a quick note on 44. I think Gary brought it up before. It would be interesting to know kind of the sums of monies that have been unappropriated from previous warrant articles, especially in relationship to the school, especially with kind of like the increased hole that we're trying to fix. And I don't know if it was the town accountant that may already have this information or whatnot, but I think it's a fair question to ask as this goes along with some other warrant articles that we'll be discussing with the school and the select board. Right? What if there was $150,000 there and we could cut that out of free cash or have that as a reason to not touch the deficit? And it's, yeah, so just a thought there.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. We'll make a note to ask the town accountant if,
Big
If
tree,
there's
small axe.
okay.
Michelle has her hand up.
Oh, go ahead, Michelle.
Along the same lines, how do you determine based on what's left over, when there's something left over, is there a formula that's used to put into capital stabilization or regular stabilization? How is that determined?
Well, previously, the capital stabilization fund really had not been used in the past. I think that had been established some years ago and they put some amount of money in and have never done anything with it since. But as we've been talking about 5-year planning and capital planning, I think we all have talked about that it makes sense to start to save money specifically for capital because we have needs that are going to come up. And so I think that's what brought this back to the surface. So there's no formula per se. We don't have, I think Jim tried to introduce a free cash policy as a draft to say, we'll put X amount in here, we'll use X in the budget, but it's still in draft form and nobody's voted on that. So I think at this point it would be discretion on when we get to that number. Go ahead, Zach.
I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make this too long. I'm curious if Article 43 was listed prior to the article requesting there be a special education fund. How would that work?
Say that again, Zach.
Is there currently a special education?
No, there's not.
No,
This would be Article 43 would be to establish it.
Okay, so sorry, Article 43 is to establish the Special Education Stabilization Fund.
Yeah.
Article 44 is to put that money into it. And I'm just curious if 44 came before 43, people would be like, there is none. So like, wouldn't we have to establish that before we ask to put money in there? Or is it a normal concurrent thing to propose a whole new special education stabilization fund and then already suggest to put money in there?
Well, so Article 43 comes before it. So Article 43 would be to establish the fund. And then if that gets voted yes, then when it gets to Article 44, it will have been established and then you can do that.
Is that typical?
I
not
don't,
common. I wouldn't say it's common.
it's not common because we don't regularly establish haven't really regularly established stabilization funds. So
Yeah, Karen, your feed is really slow. You are really kind of jerky right now.
I'm
I don't
gonna
know why.
I'll shut my video off because
Okay,
maybe
yeah.
that will help.
Yeah.
Sure will.
Are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Now
So
you don't
yeah.
know, do you?
I understand that if 43 was to be approved, then 44 would almost definitely be approved. I just wanted to point out that it seems like there should be more time spent or understanding on 43 before we're already allocating money to there. And therefore it's like, is this a little premature for this year? I don't know. It's just a thought.
Well, I think that prior to town meeting, we'll have a lot more information about 43. We still have a couple of months, so we'll know the mechanics of 43. The interesting thing though, Zach, while you're down that road, is that if 43 fails, what do we do with 44? You know, so now there's
Pass
that
over.
5,000 sitting there. You know, I don't know if we could transfer it to some other account, if you could transfer it directly to the school budget so they could use it for that, or just pass over, as Karen said. So
Or make
there
a
are a lot of
motion
things
to,
that, yeah, there are a
right.
lot of things that could happen.
Yeah. And I think we should kind of have like a recommendation kind of in our back pocket if that is to be the case, you
Right.
know?
Right,
right, or it could transfer into the capital stabilization fund instead.
correct. Right. We'll
Which would-
we'll have plenty of meetings where the recommendations will get finessed.
Yeah,
Understood.
well, just, oh, go ahead, Al. Go
No,
ahead.
just briefly, I was wondering, and Tom, you're online, so maybe you can answer the question. Could a capital, special ed stabilization fund, or, you know, nuance it however you want to, just be established within your budget? Why does it sound?
If the money were available, but as everybody here is painfully aware, what we're having it doesn't even equal a level service budget. We will once again be making cuts. So to, you know, take money aside and form a line item when, you know, we're not even sure what we're going to have in terms of what we have right now. It's a little challenging. I hope I answered the question, Al. I wasn't trying to be.
No, you did. I think I was thinking more specifically about if Article 43 doesn't pass for whatever reason at town meeting, Article 44, which is taking the 55.5 or whatever the money is, can't that be slid into an account that, you know, a school account for that specific purpose?
Yeah, we could certainly do that. I believe. I can check with the legal, but
Yeah, I don't know either.
I've always been told not to play lawyer, so I'll not do that. So
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so, I think I need to look at our calendar. So so town meeting is in first week in May. We need to kind of work backwards. The town warrant needs to be published no later, I believe, than 2 weeks before town meeting. We try to do it 3 weeks before. So that puts us to early April. So we don't have a tremendous amount of time to get through these presentations and make decisions. So we don't actually have a lot of time. So we've got some time, but not a tremendous amount. So it's helpful that many of these articles Jim will be able to supply answers to. So just kind of looking back. So presentation wise, one of the biggest ones is CPC should be easy to do. One of the biggest ones is water and sewer, and then the internet board. Just trying to think through. Those are some big ones. So maybe if someone would be so kind, Al or Cindy or anybody else wants to kind of help me get
Absolutely.
this scheduled, that would be super helpful.
Sure.
Sure, yep.
And
Yeah.
maybe even talking to Jim about some of these, so this way, you know, we already have the knowledge and and we can kind of move through some things quicker. Might be
I,
helpful.
I have a meeting with Jim next Tuesday,
Okay,
on the personnel board issues. So I don't know, if I go through these things, whether he would be ready for next Tuesday. Maybe we should try to get the, either internet advisory or the water and sewer people in next week. Maybe, I think Jim would be ready for all of these, but, I don't meet with him until Tuesday. He said that was the first time that he was available, was next Tuesday.
okay. So we already have water and sewer scheduled for next Tuesday, so that's affirmative.
All right, good.
So maybe if we can get the internet, committee in also, because those are two big ones. Which we may
Right.
not get all the information in one sitting, so this way
Right.
we have time.
And did you also want the select board as a board to meet with us to talk about the budget? Let's go back to the budget as well. I
Right.
mean, so did you want to, because they need some
I
advance
think we need,
notice.
it would be wonderful. I'm not sure you're gonna have the entire select board to come in, but we can have the chair
The chair.
and
Okay.
maybe a second representative. I'm not sure.
Okay.
We can try to have a joint committee that we can request that, but that
Yeah.
might be hard.
Right. Okay.
Cindy, I'll let you figure out the details of time and place with Jim, if you don't mind.
Okay.
And point me in the right direction. And as long as it doesn't bump into my nap hour or whatever, I'm good to go.
That's fine.
No, all kidding aside, rather than having too many people working on the scheme, I'll just let you, as you're talking to Jim, figure out what's the best for us.
Okay. And if you wanted to follow up with, you should try to schedule the Internet Advisory Committee.
That'd be great.
Who is our representative? Is that Duncan? Is Duncan
It's
on that?
Duncan. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Duncan, so you can coordinate with him as well
That
to, he's a new member to that committee, so I know he's not, deeply involved in it yet, but I think if you worked with Duncan and getting
Yep.
as much information as you can about that subject, that would be
Mhm.
great.
Yeah. Yeah. And really feel free to ask questions early. So you're
Yeah.
kind of, you
I'll-
come in with some knowledge too. That would be super helpful, Al.
I'll be happy to do that
Yeah,
tomorrow.
that'd be great. Okay, then I'll go through this tomorrow and see what other, but I think those are the two biggest ones. And then we can certainly either ask the Board of Health or Jim can represent both of those, I think.
Right, and Karen, you and I offline will just go through these numbers,
Yeah.
just go through the warrant articles again, so
Okay.
that we're on the same page as to which
Yeah.
one we need information on.
Great.
Okay,
Great, that'd be awesome. Super, awesome.
Zach has his hand up.
Go ahead, Zach.
Sorry, I was just wanted to make a comment on scheduling this with the given amount of time, even though I didn't volunteer to help with the scheduling, which I can do if you need me to reach out to anybody. But it seems like the meat and potatoes of reviewing these warrant articles are with the select board. Maybe we should try to meet with them as early as possible under the, impression that we're probably going to have to meet with them again. So it's not like all at once and towards the end, closer to town meeting. Does that make sense?
Yeah, we definitely want to meet with them sooner than later. And because what happens, so we have to vote. So we have to get all the information. We have to have all our meetings to understand the warrant articles.
Right.
And then in our meeting, we'll vote on them. And then our recommendations will be printed in the warrant. So when it gets handed out at town meeting, they're already printed in there. So we have to have our votes final so that the printed warrant will have that. So that's why it's really 3 weeks before town meeting, we'll have to have voted on everything. So that's kind of working backwards.
So
So
I
that's
kind of repeated what you said.
right, that's April 16th would be 3 weeks before.
Okay.
We have to have everything wrapped up by April 16th.
Okay. So that's our date that we gotta be done. Voted on everything, including the budget.
Okay.
All right.
There may be required some week that we might have to meet on a second evening. like a Thursday or whatever, just to wrap this up. But we've always gotten it done in the past.
Yeah, I think there's two big ones. And then once we can clear those up, I think the rest are conversations, but I think after a conversation, we'll understand it and then we'll have enough information. But we've got a couple of big ones that we definitely need some time on.
Yeah. Let's get those big ones out of the way.
Yep, perfect. Get them next week. Let's try.
Okay,
All right.
good.
So minutes, if we want to, do we have a quorum still? Do we have a quorum?
2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, we have 5 here.
Or why don't we just do it next week? Let's just call it.
Okay. That's fine with me.
I'm exhausted.
On that
Uh,
note, motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wait, we gotta
Thank
do a
you.
roll call. Don't go yet. Al,
Yep.
Al.
Yes,
Yeah, thank you. Gary's gone. He left before we announced that. Michelle,
I'm Michelle Orlando.
thank you. Cindy,
Cindy Brown, aye.
thank you. Zach
Aye.
and Karen, I. Thank you very much. Have a good night and we'll see you next week.
Too.
All right. Thank you.